Hi, today's lecture is going to provide a brief synopsis of several issues to consider with regards to technology and learning. Some of these are going to seem particularly interesting given that you are here and completing this course on learning, leveraging technology as a focal point. But the message in this lecture is going to be conveying one that's more of technology is not going to save the day, but rather more of a cautious one of be careful how much you invest in technology, but don't be scared of it either. So with that gentle introduction out of the way, let's begin. We live in a fast-paced world, and technology being integrated into all areas of our lives only seems to make that faster. We are constantly surrounded by a never-ending stream of new stuff on our devices. And we have dozens of apps and businesses capitalizing on this and keeping us moving quickly downstream in this tech-infused future. All of this builds in us, ourselves and our students, a sense of I want it now, as everything competes for speed and immediately satisfying our desires. This has led to notable changes with regards to learning and society. Although it has not changed actually fundamentally how the mind operates, it does influence how we use our mind, and that impacts how well we learn. But the mind remains the same for older generations and newer generations like millennials, etc. But some implications are concerning about what this is doing for us. For instance, Cass Sunstein in #Republic has pointed out that this self-centered system of organizing information into what we want when we want it has actually created significant problems for civil society as people grow increasingly resentful of anyone who disagrees with them, as they silence them, ban them, unfriend them, and shout hateful things about people they would never have done in face-to-face settings, but they do because doing so on the screen is easier. We've all seen how this impacts both us and others, but let's zero in on some specific research and its implications for learning in this context. It's very foolish to begin. We're going to be able to go back to the so-called good old days. And I think it's equally foolish to imagine that we ought to just go all in and let technology govern everything. So let's begin with some context and reminders. First off, the context that we find ourselves in is that for most people who spend their lives in this technology-infused world, they have made it a norm to think fast, to act fast, and to demand fast responses, often in 144 characters or less. They have even led to these kind of rise of TLDR, which stands for too long, didn't read. And these icons, which we even find now on many news articles online, where you can get the Twitter version of reality, even in the news. So even on a short news of 500 words articles, they'll have a TLDR, so you can get it now, get it quick, because you don't have time to get the full story. While this might seem authentic for us as educators to encourage students to leverage what is normal in their daily life, I'm going to suggest that for learning, there's little to no reason to find that argument persuasive. These so-called digital natives are not, based upon any empirical research, been found to be any more effective at multitasking than other generations of learners. And quite frankly, the task switching that technology enables and encourages reduces their productivity, and by default, reduces their learning. So, the second thing we want to do is keep in mind some reminders about what we know about cognition, because technology does not change our mind. It impacts how our mind interacts with information, but the cognitive processes are largely left alone. So we want to remind ourselves of several things that help in maximizing learning. For instance, desirable difficulties, such as spacing out practice across time and context, such as requiring the elaboration of material in students' own words, such as expanding upon those, asking questions of those elaborations, forcing them to clarify and refine what they mean, and so forth, as well as the retrieval of information from their minds, not from Google. All of these are better for learning, but each of these is better suited for a slower paced environment. And technology usually is tipped towards a fast-paced environment. So we want to just keep that in mind because that is the context. So what we're going to do over the next few slides are briefly examine research from three major sources that kind of culminated in some key findings from their main work of research of decades, specifically looking at technology and its implications for learning, What do we do about it? And again, we're taking this from a lens of primarily this cautious vantage point right now. The first source we're going to look at is Daniel Kahneman, which he synthesizes his findings across time in the book Thinking Fast and Slow. A lot of his work overlays with what we're reading in Willingham's Why Don't Students Like School? So we're going to be brief here, but I love how he articulates a distinction that you're likely already familiar with. Recall Dan Willingham's first principle that we are not naturally good thinkers, and unless the cognitive conditions are right, we actually will avoid thinking. Kahneman offers a nice model for which we can understand this principle in his System 1 and System 2 thinking. There's some visuals on the screen here. Feel free to pause and look over them, but they kind of capture what's going on. So notice that this System 1 thinking is kind of the autopilot type of thinking. This is what we do most of the time based upon simply the fact that it's what we do most of the time. In terms of learning in a technological world, the inundation of technology affects us here. If we operate on this fast, automatized system, we largely allow our very low surface level thinking about topics to shape how we interpret information, and this is problematic. System 2 thinking, however, is this rational type of thinking. You might think of this as the part that makes us, as humans, stand unique from all other life as far as we are aware of. We're the only ones that can reason, that can ask why, that can wonder at things. All other life, as far as we know, operates solely on System 1. And so when what we want our students for learning, we want them to focus on System 2. But if we allow them to go on this, if we just simply let them operate on System 1 thinking, they're going to simply internalize everything in a way that they imagine it to be, but not necessarily forcing them to slow down and think logically about things, to imagine complex features about the decisions, to think about the implications and so forth. So we can leverage System 1 by internalizing, by making fast and unconscious key essential information such as math facts or historical dates of significance, which are helpful to have on automatic pilot because they allow us to contextualize new information more accurately. But largely, as far as we're related in learning, our focus is on System 2. So how does this relate to technology? I'm just going to offer a few brief thoughts. Number one, technology tends to encourage System 1 thinking. If that is what it's doing, it's probably not helpful. And unless your goal is to guarantee some sort of memorization of essential facts and skills, that technology is not helping. If you're using it solely to help memorize, then perhaps it might. Second, the use of technology in learning may force rational thinking, but if we are thinking about how to use X tool or this technological product, that's what they're learning, not the content you want. And so you need to be cautious about when and why you use technology in the learning environments, considering these two thinking systems. The next source that we're going to look at in this short survey of technological learning is from the work of Sherry Turkle. Turkle spent decades researching technology and its impacts on youth at MIT. Her early work was marked by optimism about the promise of technology and its potential to enhance the human experience. Over the years, however, her optimism about it faded, notably towards pessimism. In a more recent book, Alone Together, she outlines some major concerns about technology and its implications for humanity. Among the major concerns include, 1, more technology integration leads to less productive and less healthy relationships with other people. 2, more technology use, especially social media use, is directly related with increased senses of narcissism. You might also look at Jean Twenge's Generation Me for a focused look at this. And third, the more technology is used, the more all-encompassing it becomes. It literally consumes the lives of those who use it more and more, becoming an addiction for them. So the implications of this for our classrooms are fairly clear. We ought to be cautious about replacing real-world relationships with technology-based ones. And we should probably guarantee that our students have protected no screen time to ensure that it does not become all-encompassing within the context of our learning environments. The next slide and the last major source that we're going to explore in this lecture comes from Marianne Wolf, who sums up her work in Reader Come Home, which is a series of letters written in order to capture some important lessons from her work as well as offering suggestions that she has to improve life moving forward, specifically with regards to learning. A lot of her work links between neuroscience and cognition, and one of the central points that she emphasizes is this principle of neuroplasticity, which is simply put that our brain is malleable. It actually restructures itself based upon what we do. For the focus of this lecture and her work, technology use is one of the ways in which our brain is restructured to interact with information. So to zero in on some of the major findings that she offers related to learning, Wolf gives us several more areas for concern. Number one, because technology specifically capitalizes on the brain's attraction to new stimuli, literally giving you a shot of dopamine for each "what's next in my stream," the extended use of technology, especially social media networks, virtually guarantees addiction to it. They're designed to do that. And so we have to be cautious about that. Second, the consistent use of technology in our literacy development changes how we want to learn, for the worse. Specifically, because we're constantly reading these little short bits, 144 characters and less and so forth, our minds shift towards wanting those short bits. And her work has found that over extended time, using technology for reading, our deep reading ability is hindered. We're less capable of having empathy for those whom we read about, and largely in part because we cannot handle the exposition required to develop empathy about characters and so forth. And so since in schools we want them to dive into deep reading, into slowing down, into developing empathy for characters and understanding them on their terms, not my imposed terms upon them, this really operates against what we're aiming for. And third, she points out that over time, our ability to contemplate, reason, and just think quietly for extended time about something is going to be potentially significantly hindered, which is going to have severe ramifications for learning. So there's a lot of reasons for caution as we've kind of looked at about this. And so most of this lecture is already focused on these concerns with regards to technology, and again, that is quite purposeful. What I want to close with, though, is that there are many positive ways in which we can utilize technology to expand access to resources that we simply had no opportunity to do in generations past, as well as opening doors of possibility to many new ideas, all of which could potentially be beneficial. So as a result, my closing thoughts on this lecture are twofold. I want each of you to sincerely look at technology with hope and to consider its potential to improve learning, but to do so while holding a strong sense of skepticism towards its likelihood of succeeding. We want to embrace technology where we can, for the purpose of enhancing learning, and use it there, and leave it out of our schools as much as otherwise needed. Each school and district operates in a distinct context, so this background is going to hopefully be helpful for you to sift through the various tools and products that you might have, or might be consider adding at your context that are technological in basis. And I encourage you to integrate technology with caution. So consider first and foremost these principles of learning that we outlined in the Willingham text. If the technology works against these principles, it's very likely not worth your time or investment. If it works with them, then consider the cautions that are laid out in this lecture here from the works of Wolf, of Turkle, of Kahneman, as well as others, and just these ideas there, because if it works with the principles and it passes through that there, you're going to be able to filter out and zero in on a much smaller list of technological tools that actually have a good reason to believe are worth including in your program. A couple examples of those that I have consistently used over the past 5 years are Nearpod and Edpuzzle. And if you want to hear more about those, you can email me. I'm happy to provide them. But those are two that have passed these tests of fitting with the principles of learning and passing these concerns about technology and its implications for student learning as well. So let's close with a reminder that will operate deeply under the kind of whole deep structure of this issue of technology and learning, the speed of learning. I have found a fantastic classical principle, thousands of years old, that I think we can remember quite easily and that can help us in this regard as well. Festina lente. The phrase in Latin simply means roughly, to make haste, go slow. It's often depicted by sorts of visuals that of a fast image that's fused with a slow one to show how these two things are bound together. So in this one you see this anchor symbolizing the slowness and stopping a ship, and you see this fish that's zooming through the water. They're combined together to reflect festina lente, going fast by going slow. And the second visual, you have this picture of a turtle or some kind of turtle-shaped creature there, which obviously is slow, also with a sail indicating this fast. And so we fuse these two things together. The bottom line that for us is the idea is that if we want to go fast, it is best to slow down. That is, if we actually want to have learning occur, the fastest way to good learning is not to go fast, but to slow down. So in the case of learning, it's really not so much a sprint as it is a plodding race to the finish line. Slow and steady can make all the difference. So, to wrap things up, festina lente.